Oh, I shouldn't have been wearing headphones for that.
We'll get to that in a little bit, though.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody, for blowing out your speakers there. We got a Fremen warrior here.
But I'm back.
She's back.
Back again.
Yeah, I had to hold it down last week. You weren't feeling well, so I did record a solo episode. I'm not sure how the reception was on that.
I thought you did a great job. And if people haven't listened to Daniel's solo effort, they really should.
You're just trying to butter me up here.
You had everything. You had news updates. You had sparkling humor. And you didn't completely go off totally on Star Trek, but you did talk a lot about Star Trek.
Oh, it was like 10 seconds of Star Trek.
I guess.
But I guess my question is, like, if I did this podcast by myself, would it just be 15-minute episodes? Is that the ratio when we have an hour episode? It's 15 minutes of me and 45 minutes of you.
I don't think so. I think it could go one of two ways. It would really depend on your mood.
Yeah.
I think you could do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, or you could go like 2 hours.
Depends on what I'm talking about, how much caffeine I've had.
Are y'all talking about Marie Antoinette?
Depends on how much social. If I had a lot of social interaction that day, either via work or otherwise, I probably talk less because my battery is drained. But if it's been a couple days since I talked to anyone, like when you go on a trip in April, I will not speak to a human soul while you are gone.
We'll speak to Marvin, who right now, our third co-host Marvin is with us, and he is sitting as far up on my lap as he can be without
being on the microphone. Yeah.
Yes.
But that week, like, I'll be very talkative when you get back because I won't have said anything to anybody.
Well, we did recently travel together again, so
that's true. I touched on it last week, but we'll give the full update here. We went to Orlando to do the
shocker.
Do the Princess Weekend races.
Yes.
You did the 5 and the 10K. I just did the 10K.
It's a lot. You know what? A 10K is a lot shorter than a marathon.
Yeah, it is.
Like cutting off 20 miles of content there. I was amazed at when we finished the 10K that not only like the buses hadn't even started moving yet because they don't start. I don't think they start like really leaving until like after 6:30, and it was still dark.
It was still dark.
We had time to go back, like undress, eat a snack, make a virtual queue for Guardians.
And the virtual queue, you can't do that till 7. So we had done all that before 7
We were already in our hotel room, lay around, finally get up, go to Magic Kingdom. They had to make my coffee twice.
Oh, that's right.
Because they used like no ice for a cold type of coffee. Then I kind of felt bad about it because clearly it was the girl was being trained and they were having to remake everybody's drink. So then it made me feel less. And guys, I am the type of person that I will not send food back. I get really like nervous about stuff like that. But when you have been up at 2 a.m. for 2 days in a row, and I knew if I didn't have coffee, I wasn't going to be a magical person. So I'm like almost in tears talking to the CM because I feel so bad about having to ask to get my drink redone. And she was basically like being my therapist at Disney. Like, it's all right. We'll get you taken care of. And I was like, I never do this. Because normally I would have thrown it away. I would have eaten my money and I would have gone about my day. But I was like, I have to have coffee immediately. And yours had more ice in it. Still wasn't
not
great,
the amount you would normally want,
but yours was drinkable.
Cold
Mine was literally unedible. Like, it was awful. Like, it was so bad. Like, and I even tried. I was like, maybe I'll just try to drink it. It was so gross. You need the ice. So then I got the coffee. Things were good, but we still had time. They were still serving breakfast at the Sleepy Hollow place. So we were able to get my favorite Disney snack. Although I guess you said you have to walk around for a Disney snack in our previous episode.
I believe a snack in the Disney parks requires the ability to walk with it.
Like, yeah, and I guess you could. It would just be messy. Yeah, so we had time to get our strawberry waffles, meander around the park for a little bit. And on the flip side, when we did the marathon, we got back because the marathon takes so much longer. I mean, it's 26.2 miles, and you have to get on the bus. You have to leisurely walk to your hotel room, and no breakfast was being served. We could barely even gather ourselves to shower, even though we desperately needed showers. I think I ended up getting, like, food from the pool bar. They have Mickey pretzels there. You had, like, I think you did walk to manage to go get yourself a burger and fries.
I limped over to the food court, yeah.
So, yeah, a 10K is a lot shorter than a marathon. But if you guys want to hear more about our marathon and you didn't check out the episode 52, we ran a marathon. I highly encourage that one if you like the Run Disney stuff. Also, I think Daniel did mention it in my hiatus that I joined as a guest, my first guest co-hosting on a podcast, the No Guilt Disney podcast, and I talked a lot about the Princess weekend and some Run Disney stuff there. Thank you again for having me on. Shout out to Patty. So I know a lot of people always mention that they like our Disney content. They like when we talk about Disney stuff. So if you want some straight up Disney, go check them out. But it was a fun weekend. I enjoyed it. It was very short. I think, again, a difference between a 10K weekend, and then, of course, I did the 5K too, and a marathon weekend is we actually, I don't know if you're even aware of this, we did way more park time in like 2.5 days than we did for like a 4 or 5 day marathon trip.
Oh, yeah.
Other than like the running into the parks.
Because before the race, marathon or otherwise, you really don't want to go into the parks too much.
Yeah, and we were so nervous too.
You'll wear your legs out. You'll wear your feet out. Particularly for a marathon, you don't want to do that. But then after the marathon, it's like
so tired,
so tiring. Like we walked into, after the marathon was over, we walked into Hollywood Studios just to eat, but we literally just limped in, sat down and ate, and limped left. Back out. That's it. We had these plans. I didn't think we looked
at a store.
Yeah, we had these plans. Maybe we'll look at a store. Maybe we'll see if the ride weights aren't too bad and ride something. And we did none of that.
Well, you had mentioned to me before that you're like, oh, we'll finally get to see Galaxy's Edge at night, because we've only seen Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars land for the non-Disney speak people, at night in Disneyland. Yep. We've never seen what the Hollywood Studios version of that looks like at night, and I'm like, that's a great idea. We can take some pictures with our medals. We didn't do that. Nah. So what do you prefer, a marathon or a 10K?
Oh, a 10K, please.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
And we've done the challenge before for Wine and Dine, where we do the 10K the day before and then the half. And we've never had, like, we're more tired and we'll give ourselves time to rest, but we're able to just go hang out a park that evening when we finish the half day. A marathon's just a whole other ballgame.
Like, I'm happy to have a half marathon. I'm going to make sure that's very clear. I am happy to have a half marathon somewhere on my running calendar for the year to keep me focused and remind me that I do need to get those miles up there. I would really love it if more places would offer 10Ks, because I just feel like, if I'm just doing a 5K in my local area, that's fine. But if I have to drive 1 or 2 hours to do a race, I feel like I'd rather do a 10K than a 5K.
A 10K is the perfect distance.
You feel like you get more out of it. It's a good distance. I'm at that point where I'm enjoying the 10Ks quite a bit.
But you know what I'm also enjoying?
What's that?
And I know that we've talked a lot about running, but you know what we also like to do, as we are the We Watch TV podcast.
Ooh, is it sit on our butt and watch TV?
All right, so what have we been watching?
I mentioned a few of these last week, but I think we'll start Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Amazon.
Yes, there are 8 episodes, and we have watched 6 of the 8, so we're coming down to the wire on that. I'm going to be sad when it's over.
Yeah, I'll be sad as well. I like the show a lot.
It's totally different than the movie. That movie is almost like 20 years old at this point, right?
It's not. I think it's not almost 20 years old. I think
it was 2005, so that would be almost 20.
So
years
19
old.
Years. You're going to draw.
Yes.
Okay.
That is 19 is almost 20. And I never super loved that movie to begin with, just because of all the real life dynamics going on. I support all women, but back then, 100% Team Aniston. What about you?
Was
that
like
you agree?
Yes, was that a big movie? Like, I mean,
that movie wasn't as big as the real life dynamics.
Yeah,
Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston were like the couple for that time period. Remember, he did one of the best Thanksgiving episodes of Friends, by the way, and obvious cheating on set. So I feel like that movie is more remembered because of everything that happened outside of it. But that's enough about the movie. Let's talk about the show. I think the show started off I wasn't bored at all in the first episode, but episode 4 for me is where it really hit its stride.
Yeah, I agree.
And it got really, really good. So about halfway through, literally. With 4 is exactly halfway if we're having 8 episodes, whereas 19 is almost 20. Okay, so Daniel and I literally just had to cut a piece of footage because we just had a conversation almost identical to what Jane and John, because their names are Jane and John Smith, get it? It's like their spy code names. We literally just had a conversation like what they have a conversation about in the therapy episode. I'm sitting here waiting for Daniel to give his thoughts on the show, which you claim to really like, and you're like waiting for me to go first, and I'm like, well, I don't want to be the one that's doing the entire conversation. You're like, but that's what I'm waiting for you to do. So if you guys have seen the show, you would know. So Daniel,
the therapy episode hit a little too close to home. It was couples therapy for the two
Sarah
main
Paulson
characters.
plays the therapist.
It cut a little too close to the bone, I would say, on a few different points.
Everyone should go to therapy. Not sponsored. Sponsored by our brains and our mental health. Good day and good mental health. Let's backtrack it. We're going wildly off course.
Yeah, episode 4 was the one that really
That's not the therapy episode.
I agree. Yeah, it's not. I agree with you that I liked it, but episode 4 was the one that sold me on it. I think because they meet the other couple that is also a Jane and a John that are also work for the same company supposedly, and so they have that. Every episode of the show is
it's like a trope on being a couple, growing in a marriage, being with a partner,
but also they're spies.
Yeah, they work for somebody. It's like hi, right? It's what they call
That's
the
what
guy
they call the
or the
person.
person.
They don't really know who they are, but. So they meet another couple, and so that episode is about, how you always meet that couple and you have like a couple days worth of interaction with them, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, I hate them.
Yeah, you get the
I don't want to hang out with them at all.
You realize you never want to see these people again. Everybody has gone through that. That episode was just funny. They had a good line. They were talking about like intimacy. They're like, oh, in the other John and Jane, which Jane played by Parker Posey.
Other John and Jane were like, yeah, we were on each other
Instantly.
immediately. And Donald Glover's character goes like, well, we had to kill someone to get in the mood.
And we just lost it. And this show is funny. I think Daniel talked about it in last week's podcast. He's like, it's funny. It's not as funny as we thought it was going to be. It's getting funnier, I think. I think we were expecting it to be really like, not slapstick funny, but it's got, if you have a partner and you're in a couple, especially if you're married, you're going to start. And I like that they're doing that with this like spy element.
I think the comedy in this show comes more from the situations than it does from they're not tossing zingers across at each other constantly. It's about the situations that they get put into. And I appreciate that.
I like that a lot. And I really like that couple episode in particular. The whole time I'm sitting there thinking, because I still have like the spy aspect in it, and I'm like, please don't turn around and like, this is the mission that you have to kill or try to kill our John and Jane. Please just be a trope. And I appreciated that. And heck of a cast. I think we already said Parker Posey was one with the other Jane. Sarah Paulson plays the therapist. Is it Ron Perlman?
Yeah.
They have an episode again, What Are All Couples, which, I mean, Daniel and I, as we have our fur baby here, but we are the childless millennials, and I get it more than you do as a woman, unfortunately. Be better society. The question of like human children, but like Ron Perlman, like I don't even know because they never even go into exactly what the missions are.
Their mission was to collect Ron Perlman and get him to a safe house.
But we don't know why.
Yeah.
Like the show doesn't go into that. It doesn't go as deep into the spy territory about what each mission means. That's just like a background into what the actual show is about, which I think it really is about relationships. So if you're looking into it and you want to know, because at first I think that was my issue with the first couple episodes. I'm like, well, what is the mission? Why are they following this woman? What are they doing? Because I was focused on like the spy side of things. That's not the point of it. You get the sprinklings in, but in that particular episode with the kids, Ron Perlman, even though he's an old man, was kind of acting like a kid. There's like the scene with the medicine. He's like, I don't want to take the medicine.
Yeah, and then there's that moment when they're on the porch, about ready to get it on, and suddenly they look up and there he is just standing in the window. They thought he was asleep, and he's standing there and he's like, I threw up.
Did he like knock?
Yeah, he like knocked on the window and was like, I threw up in my bed.
It was good though. So good. Do you think you had mentioned when we were watching an episode that like it could be, is Donald Glover like a producer on the show?
I think so, yeah.
Know?
Yes, I believe he is.
So this isn't a Daniel, like, oh, Percy Jackson's been renewed thing. Do you truly...
His name is on the credits, as a producer of the show.
So you think that's why we're getting such good guest stars?
I think so. Yeah, I think he's got a really good network of people. So because like you said, who was the guy that showed up for like the first 2 minutes of the first episode and we haven't seen him again?
Was that the hot neighbor guy?
No, at the very beginning, the couple that we think was a John and Jane that were like getting taken
Alexander
out.
Skarsgård.
Yeah,
I can never say
Alexander
his name right,
Skarsgård. He's like a big star,
but then Paul Dano plays their neighbor. He's been in a lot of stuff too. So there's a lot of good, like, big name.
And as far as I've seen, like, their neighbor is nothing more than just the hot neighbor.
I guess so.
Like, that Jane finds hot. Like, there's no plot has driven his direction necessarily. So I don't know. And Skarsgård, I mean, this isn't a spoiler because it's literally the opening of the show.
Yeah, like
but
the first 10 seconds.
Unless that's a time jump of some description, and maybe we'll see his character in another way later. Like,
I would like that.
You know, he was like even credited as man or something.
Yeah.
On the Amazon credits. So like he's just in there for that short little period of time. So they've gotten some really good actors to play just small bit parts.
I know that Sarah Paulson was good as the therapist.
Yes.
I will say that I feel like sometimes shows don't do the best job of portraying therapists because they were making her kind of like, and then I saw this bird.
They did
this
that.
Animal. And as someone who goes to therapy, that's not, at least it's not been my experience in therapy.
They did that pretentious stuff, but I do think when John and Jane were having a conversation and she was interjecting, some of the things she said were good
make sense,
and made sense. But yeah, they did interject some of that weird, like, therapists telling you very odd stories that don't seem to make any sense.
Yeah.
And that's not been my experience.
Maybe that's how it is for rich people.
Maybe rich people therapists are different than our therapists. I don't know.
Do we know if it's getting a season 2 yet?
I don't know.
Because
I don't know how season 1 ends yet, so
I would assume that we are. I accidentally saw it because each episode title is kind of like I think one was the double date. That was episode 4. Couples therapy was the one we just watched, and I think the last episode is titled The Breakup. So clearly that I spoiled that for myself by accident. So I was like, well, obviously they're gonna probably break up or split or something. Are we gonna be sizzled for a season 2? I hope we do get a season 2. Unless I have a very satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I do want a satisfying conclusion out of my season 1 that wraps things up. But if I really like the show, and I do like this show, and I vibe with the characters really well, that, like, I obviously want more. But I'm also, you know, if it comes to a really satisfactory conclusion, I'll be accepting of that.
I wish it was 10 episodes, not 8.
Yeah,
Streaming continues to rip us off.
I'll be honest, like, depending on the type of show you're watching, a 22-episode season could leave you with a lot of filler, right? A lot of episodes that are really not...
We used to be well-fed.
Yeah, but sometimes you'd get episodes and shows for 22 episodes that just like, what are we doing here? Like, why is this happening?
Like in One Tree Hill, where they had the whole dream sequence episode that went back into the 40s that had absolutely nothing to do with the plot in season 6.
Because they had to fill 22 episodes, and so they got to come up with something. But I think we've gone a really hard direction on the other way, where it's like 8 and 10 episodes.
Give me 10.
Man, I
like Percy Jackson, we needed 10.
Yeah, there should have been 10 episodes of Percy Jackson. I mean, like, Strange New Worlds gets 10, and I wish they would get
a little more.
12, 14.
I think somebody said it best. We wait. Like, I used to feel like back in the day with the traditional, I don't know, was it traditional, like, network cable TV, where the shows would be like from September to May. I felt like that time period in the summer would take forever. Now you're basically waiting a year, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. Look at Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah.
It's shocking to see how they looked in season 1. Like, they were actual little kids. And now, like, Millie Bobby Brown's, like, planning her wedding. Like, they're, like, adults now.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre.
I think I would probably be more accepting of 8 and 10 episode seasons if I knew I was only waiting about a year to get the next season. But with this wait, and I know some of the wait is from the strike, but you know what? Let's be honest. Before the strike,
we were still
waiting long times in between seasons sometimes for some of these shows because they're filming them more like movies, and so the actors are taking other jobs, and so they have to work out scheduling to get the next season put together, or if they even get, you know, if they even get picked up for a second season. So
and I definitely really do like this show, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It's just, I think it is one of those shows that I'm not going to, like, obsessively be waiting for, so I'm all right to wait about it, but I don't want it to be a show that I forget about. Because I was thinking, when we were talking about the way therapists are portrayed, I can't even remember now and we talked about it on this podcast, and I know we're getting to season 2. I don't know when. What is the show with Harrison Ford and the therapist? Shrinking.
Yeah.
I'm like, I couldn't even, that's on Apple. I couldn't even remember the name of it. I'm like, I feel like it's been so long.
Yeah.
But you know what tends to have, well, the first season didn't, but the second season of Abbott Elementary, which is on ABC, but we watch it on Hulu, it had kind of a full set of seasons. I don't know if they're going to get the full set, like the same amount, like the 20 episodes of season 2 for season 3 because of the strike.
I mean, they'll have to go into the summer if they do.
Do you think, I don't know what the choices they're making.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure about that. I think we were having a conversation the other day that streaming has kind of changed the game for that. It used to be the summer was your dead zone. Now, it seems like June is where they're putting every single thing. That June used to be the classic month of, you might put like a Survivor out there. That's kind of where reality TV took off. You might stick something like that in the summer. Now we're putting all our stuff. So I think they could. I don't know. I haven't looked it up, but we are all caught up.
You are. I haven't. I've missed multiple gaps of episodes between episodes.
Yes,
seasons
I chose
1 and 2.
When I was trying to decompress. I'm like, do you care? Because Daniel desperately wanted to play some game or do something, and I'm like, I don't want to watch Friday Night Lights for my 5th rewatch in a row in the span of 2 months. I'm like, do you mind if I show cheat on you and I just go ahead and watch this? And you were like, that's fine. But what you've seen of it, you really like it. I think you would, if you went back and watched the episodes you'd missed, you'd still really like it.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just most of the characters haven't really like attached themselves to me in a meaningful way.
All of them. You need to go back and watch more.
I'm not going to go back and watch stuff of a 20-minute sitcom show.
And I think for you, it doesn't resonate as much because you haven't worked in that in that aspect. I grew up in a family of teachers. My mother was actually a 2nd grade school teacher. That's what Janine, the main character, teaches, 2nd grade. And then I have also done a lot of work with children. So, like, I get it from that perspective.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm not, again, it's a good show. I laugh at it quite a bit. I just, it's like, I don't feel the connection the way you do with some of the stuff that's going on.
But can you see why it's cleaning up in, like, awards?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
It is funny.
And plus, not to mention, this isn't a negative on Abbott Elementary, but like when it comes to the awards season, what sitcoms are out there to compete against right now? Is it competing against Frasier reboot? Because
I don't think that's gotten picked up
Abbott
yet.
Elementary kicks the crap out of the Frasier reboot.
I think it's great. I really like it. I think it's funny that we're about to start fighting again about Abbott Elementary live on the podcast.
I was complimenting. What I'm saying is that like the landscape of 30-minute sitcoms out there right now, it is barren out there.
There's not a lot, and
so
I need more sitcoms.
Abbott Elementary is filling a very vital gap in that situation of that kind of show.
And I think Abbott Elementary being on ABC is a good choice because I think one of the many things that hurt the Frasier reboot, and that honestly hurts that 90s show, which I know they are working on season 2 now, which is on Netflix, is when it comes to that whole streaming conversation, those short little sitcoms, and you only give us like 8 to 10 episodes, it doesn't hit the same.
No, if you're a sitcom, you've got to have at least, mid-teens?
I'd say at least mid-teens.
To really get a season's worth of, because you do have a lot, like you're not... Every episode is not like this big story focused episode. Sometimes you want to have those sometimes the mess around episodes are the best episodes when it comes to sitcoms.
And that's how Daniel's been able to float in and out. You've seen most of all the episodes.
Yeah, I have.
I only watched a handful without you. So
I did the classic husband thing of like, I'm not going to watch that show. And then you'll find me standing in the living room door, like munching on a snack, watching the TV randomly as I had walked by and stopped and stood there for 5 minutes.
Those flaming hot Cheetos that you said hurt your stomach for like 5 days in a row, and I'm like, well, what'd you just eat again? I had some more. Like, didn't you just complain to me that you had like a fiery poo?
I love the pain.
And then you eat those. Anyway, the show takes place in Philadelphia, so we had some guest stars. We had Jalen Hurts. Don't really care about him, but Jason Kelsey was on one of the recent episodes. Loved that. I screamed. Love him. I love Jason Kelsey.
Do you like Jason better than Travis?
I do. And I really like Kylie, his wife.
That seems to be the general consensus.
I have so much respect for Kylie. People were like complaining. They're like, okay, well, Jason wore Chief stuff to the game. They're like, but Kylie like refused. She just wore like the University of Cincinnati stuff. And I'm like, I would literally do the same thing.
Oh, no doubt.
Like I'll go and I'll cheer for like my brother-in-law, but it's not going to touch this body unless it's like Steelers, which I've been a fan of my whole life. Like I could not do it. I would probably do the same thing. I would have worn like my college, which for her, did she go? Is that where they met? Since I know they
met at Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I believe,
okay.
Yes.
I know she's a staunch like Philly fan. So the red worked.
Yeah.
It was funny. I actually had, speaking of the podcast, backtrack that I was on, No Guilt Disney podcast. Patty, the host, she dressed as Jason Kelsey in the Chiefs overalls that he wore to the Super Bowl.
Oh, with the
and I'm like,
mask,
I could have been Kylie. And then I said, but University of Cincinnati clothes don't touch this body. But then I'm like, and then Daniel was like, but wouldn't have really been Kylie though? Because I would have refused to wear that like what she was doing. So if you get it, you get it. But they were good guest stars. But I think the episode that you and I both laughed out loud on, the biggest laugh, because Mr. Johnson is your favorite character, right?
The janitor, yes.
He's the janitor. He's apparently had 1,000 jobs, so to speak. And Gregory, that everybody hates Chris. I still call him a kid, even though he's not a kid. That's why it's so weird for me to see him like as an adult man in the show. And I've only seen a few episodes of Everybody Hates Chris, but that's what I think of that like actor as. And he's like, I'm actually from Baltimore, because they did like the Jalen Hurts speech to recognize him.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, and what did Mr. Johnson say? You say it.
He said, "Go to hell."
And we both laughed at that.
Right in the auditorium in front of everybody.
Because we do not like the Ravens.
No, we do not like the Ravens. That is a shared hatred of our
terrible.
teams, regardless of the fact that we root for also rival teams. But
yes,
neither of us like the Ravens for various reasons.
Because why would you? Ava is my favorite character. Mr. Johnson's yours. I wouldn't want to work with somebody like Ava, but she's the principal. She's chaotic. She's hilarious. She's becoming a better coworker a little bit, but still, she's not. Let's call it. She's not the best principal.
It's not. Yeah, it's the same. Like this show, I think compares well to The Office, and it's like Michael Scott. Like he's hilarious on the show. You would never want to work with a Michael Scott.
My favorite scene is actually from season 3. Which is airing currently. It just came back after the strike. I think it started in like February. And Ava was trying to be like a reformed version of Ava, because she actually completed classes to actually be able to do her job. And they were trying to, and she was being all serious with them. And they're like, we need to get the old Ava back that let us do what we wanted. So they summoned her with music. And I'm like, are they going to play Juvenile? Back that, up. And they totally did. That's like the song for elder millennial women. It like speaks to us all. Done. I could just start dancing to it right now. Do you want me to? Should I?
No, don't. You shouldn't. All right, we took a brief intermission there, worked out what we're having for dinner. I'm here. I'm back. I'm excited to be here now because I don't have to go to Walmart after this is over, and that makes me so happy.
Well, we really had to take care of Mr. Marvin.
Oh, he jumped down. He was like, it's time to eat.
He thinks because we lost an hour of sleep. So we sprung forward this weekend. So he thinks he was begging for food at like 2:30, which would be early even if it was 3:30. But he rules. He's the boss of the house.
Yes. We spring forward. It's March, but it's been snowing on and off all day. So the wonders of living in West Virginia never cease to amaze.
And you know what else is weird, though?
What's that?
The show Ghosts.
It is.
We are talking, speaking of a classic sitcom, Ghost is another sitcom, 20-minute sitcom. It airs on CBS. We watch it on Paramount Plus. They still need to fix their app. We will probably let episodes stack, but we did watch the first one. We forgot to talk about it. Then we had our Disney podcast. Then I was out of commission, but I am pleased to report, and you either know, if you don't know what I'm meaning when I say this, go watch Ghost. We know who got sucked off now.
Finally. Waited all summer to find out. Well, and really, all fall because we didn't find out. Yeah, because of the strike.
The strike delayed it because Ghost would be a show that would have normally aired in that traditional September slot.
Yeah.
But it didn't. So who got sucked off?
Flower.
Flower.
If you're not familiar with the premise of the show, The main characters inherited a home from her, grandmother or aunt or somebody. I'm not sure.
It's like her great grandmother.
And it's like this upstate New York mansion, and it is haunted. And the way the ghosts work in this world is, if you have unfinished business when you pass away, you stay a ghost, and you have to stay like within a certain radius of the area where you passed away. So all these ghosts end up living in this house because they died around
because Sass's girlfriend lived in that car. So wherever the car went, and then that person stopped. I don't know what went down with that.
And so there's a Viking there,
Thor.
There's Native American Sass. A Revolutionary War soldier and some British war soldiers. We found out in later in the first couple seasons.
Ghosts.
Yeah, the cholera pit ghosts. There's a robber baron.
There's a teenage ghost that sleeps most of the year and then comes out.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
A Wall Street ghost from like the 90s.
And then if they somehow resolve their issues that is keeping them in this mortal coil, they get what the ghosts say sucked off. And they either go up or they go down. One of the two. We've seen in both. I'm not entirely convinced it's Flower that got sucked off.
I don't think Flower got sucked off either. My theory was originally that it was Isaac, the Revolutionary War ghost's fiance, who's one of the British ghosts. And I thought, oh gosh, what if the British ghost, he's finally found happiness because they're together, so he's at peace and he's going to get sucked off. They even addressed the fan theories in that first episode. Like, it's not, so-and-so. Now, the actress that plays Flower was pregnant when they started filming again in December. So a lot of people think so the actress who plays Sam in the show, the human that is alive, that can see the ghost, she is actually pregnant right now, but they are not writing that in. But they can do the trick of like having her hold bags, wear loose clothing. The ghosts, they're all like what you died in
is the outfit you're wearing forever.
And like Trevor, the Wall Street ghost, for example, he died without pants on. So he has like a suit jacket and no pants. So that actor just never has pants on in any scene. So with Flower, where she has that, like, she's kind of a skinny, lanky hippie type, and she's got like her hippie outfit on, it would be very hard, I think, to hide that pregnancy. So the theory is that they just did that and said it was Flower so they could give that actress time off. And I think in one of the upcoming episodes, they're going to try to like communicate with her from like the beyond.
Yeah, I can even see I can even see a situation where she just wandered off into the woods.
Yeah.
And just was gone for a while and comes back, and then there's left
because
mystery.
That counts as part of the property.
Yeah, they've got a like radius. We're not sure. It's kind of fuzzy.
Yeah.
Because like the car ghost, she could only get like 5 feet away from the car, but the ghosts at the mansion, they can pretty much whatever the property line is, they're able to walk around on, because like the front, they can only go up to the front gate, but there seems to be a pretty decent amount of space in the woods around it.
Flower would have died in the woods because she got attacked by the bear when she was high. So I think you're right. I don't think she's the true person that got sucked off, and I think she's going to be back. But it is fun to talk about the show with other people and be like, I can't wait to find out who got sucked off. Yes. So if you think we're being crude right now, maybe we are.
It's
but
a highly technical term used by the ghosts to describe a major event in their post-mortal lives.
And I think there's one episode of Ghost so far that we have not seen. But like I said, we're probably, unless we get really bored, which you never know, we're going to try to let that one stack a little bit, because we do like to watch the funny shows, the little sitcoms. I like to watch more than one episode at once, especially if I'm feeling particularly stressed. It's just nice. That's how we watched the first season of Ghosts.
I think it's going to be tough to stack, to be honest with you, because like we're coming to the end of Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah.
We're
womp womp.
we're far enough into the OC season that we're in that we're
caught up on Abbott.
We're going to blow through that pretty quickly. We're caught up on Abbott. I think we're going to succumb to watching Ghosts on a weekly basis pretty quickly.
And again, I have the same question for Ghosts as I do Abbott Elementary. I don't know how many, if it's going to be short in season or what they're doing. I think a show that we no longer watch, Grey's Anatomy, is finally coming back, but I think they have confirmed that they are. Now, this could be wrong. I thought I read it. I'm going to try not to pull a Daniel making up stuff about Percy Jackson. I do think I read that it's going to be a shorter season.
I would say most shows that are television, that are like network TV, are probably going to obey. Like they might go a few weeks past where they normally would have.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much far into the summer they're going to go, because they're going to want to pick back up in September like they normally would.
All right, so Daniel, here's my question for you. Of the two comedies we've talked about, the sitcom Abbott Elementary or Ghosts, which do you prefer? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Probably Ghosts.
All right, fair enough. I think I actually like Abbott Elementary better, but it really connected with me. Whereas it's not that I dislike Ghosts, it's just that's how much I really like Abbott Elementary.
I like Ghosts, and they don't do it all the time, but when they do, like, sometimes they'll actually, like, have a flashback to, like, the ghosts in their life. And I always really enjoy it when they do that. I think it's really funny.
And right now their big plot is Jay's opening the restaurant because Samantha's husband is a chef. So because right now they run the mansion as like a B&B.
Yes.
And he wants more of a role. And the ghosts we found out that he can communicate with one of the ghosts who can dreamwalk, Sass.
Oh yeah, Sass can dreamwalk and talk to him in his dreams.
Because the ghosts can't eat food, but they can smell food.
Yeah.
Which I think is funny. If you imagine, Daniel, you as somebody who loves to eat and you love pizza and you could only smell it, what would life be like for you?
It'd be pretty tough.
You've already claimed that I ruined pizza for you because I haven't been eating pork, so we've been getting just cheese. And apparently the lack of pepperoni is just, it's hard for Mr. Daniel, even though he still gets a whole little Caesar's pepperoni and eats it without me.
Because I got my pepperoni. Like when you say let's have pizza for dinner tonight, and I know that we're just getting a cheese pizza, it's just like, I used to get excited for that.
A lovely cheese pizza just for me.
Yeah, but that's like, okay, and that's fine for an 8-year-old. For a 9-year-old,
well,
I want toppings.
But only pepperoni, though.
I'll take other toppings. Well, we can negotiate. If you wanted to negotiate some other toppings, I could get on board with some peppers and onions and mushrooms.
That's interesting. Because one time I was like, can we get some green peppers on here? And you went, please, can we just do pepperoni?
Well, because that's my primary choice.
Okay. We're deviating.
But that's obviously not an option right now. And so I'll talk about other toppings if I can't have pepperoni.
All right. What else have we been watching?
Apparently you've watched The Bachelor.
And you've watched The Bachelor because you literally sat down and watched almost the entire last episode with me that featured the hometown dates. Do you not remember you were on the couch watching it with me?
Oh, I do. I remember now, yeah.
And y'all, I'm going to turn the floor over to Daniel. I've written him some notes. I think he covers The Bachelor better than I do. So I gave him my show notes. Take it off.
This is the epic hometown dates episode where the Bachelor visits the hometown and the Airbnbs of each family, because it was clearly every single one of these three.
I didn't even say that in my show notes.
Sorry, I haven't started the show notes yet. Every single one of these three families they visited, no shot that is their house.
I
no
feel like
way.
I would be the same way, though. I mean, not just like looking at my house right now and the mess, but I don't think I want, like, there's a lot of weirdos in the world.
I get it.
Would you want people to, like, know? Like, there's a lot of weirdo. These contestants get these craziest messages from fans. Would you want people, like, knowing where you actually live?
I understand that. I wish they would. It seems like they're kind of trying to make it seem like that's their house, and I wish they'd just be a little bit more forthcoming with it instead of, do it at a park or a community center.
Well, they did have Rachel's home date.
But these places that they are picking just look so sanitized and unlived in.
They need the dog toys everywhere, a coffee stain.
Anyway, I'm sorry. That was my own gripe of the episode. So let's see. So hometown dates. Christmas tree farm, Daisy, not Duck's date. The best one we believe this is the best one purely from a date perspective. Production clearly leaned heavily into the Hallmark trope as heavy as they could because of, it was on a Christmas tree farm.
Yes.
Kelsey's date was in New Orleans. Most chemistry with Kelsey and romantically.
That means they have the most chemistry romantically. Okay. Footnote.
Kelsey's dad is hot. We believe Kelsey's dad is hot. Looks like an aged up Chris Pratt.
You agreed with that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay.
Team Kelsey's dad for Golden Bachelor. I don't acknowledge. I cannot sign my name to that part. personally.
You wouldn't watch him as the Golden Bachelor?
No, I don't want to watch the Golden Bachelor. I don't want to have anything to do with that or the Golden Bachelorette. I want to be away from those things. I think
Kelsey's dad is hotter than half the Bachelors we've had.
I have an unhinged note from the New Orleans episode on my notes that I don't recall.
You made batch notes?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have The Bachelor, old Chris Pratt, New Orleans episode, period, and then another statement that can you decipher this for me? I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I didn't know you made
batch notes.
I'm going to go ahead.
I was still sick when we watched this episode too.
Okay.
So
I think this has to do with the New Orleans thing, but I'm just going to go out and say it. Why did I type out tits story?
Oh, because when we were watching the episode, my microphone is shaking. You were telling me about when you went to New Orleans for work.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I remember that now. Okay. Was that implying that I'm to tell that story?
I believe so.
Okay. I mean, it's a pretty short story.
They're your show notes. So I certainly hope that's what you're talking about when you're writing notes about tits in your phone. I hope so.
I'm at my work conference, which is in the hotel next to the Superdome, where the Saints play. And so it's like maybe a mile walk down to Bourbon Street.
I've been to the Superdome. That's where the Sugar Bowl is too, right? Okay.
Yeah, down to Bourbon Street, and then you get down to Jackson Square. And I walked down to Jackson Square to go to the, I don't remember what, Café du Monde, where they get the beignets and the coffee. And so I walked down there and do that, and I'm coming back, and I'm like, well, I should walk up Bourbon Street just to see what it's like. This was, May or June, around that time is usually when the conference is going on. And, this was mid-weird day. Like, it wasn't not crowded. And so I'm walking up Bourbon Street, heading back to my hotel, and this gigantic bouncer, like this guy, okay, I'm a 6 foot tall man. I'm not short. This guy towered over me, and he was like built.
Buff.
Like he's a bouncer to get people out of a place. This guy looks at me, points at me, like aggressively points at me, and
like
goes,
Uncle Sam.
Yeah. And he points at me, and he goes, "Hey man, do you want to see some nice tits?"
I thought he said you told the story that he said to you look like somebody who'd like to see some nice tits.
Oh yeah, maybe that's what he said. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was like off-putting, and I was like, I'm good, brother.
I just remember you described to me Bourbon Street as the county fair meets Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
With tales of that.
I think that fits. So
I hope that was why you have that in your note on a phone.
I believe so. But I do endorse a visit to New Orleans.
I was going to say you do endorse. Okay, never mind. This episode is so unhinged.
I do endorse a trip to New Orleans. I think it is one of the purely unique American experiences that you can have.
I have been.
And you need to go as an adult, not as a kid, so you can experience things like a great set.
When I was in 3rd grade, because WVU played Florida, we should have won, but we didn't. And I just remember they had like their own, because it's like bowl games are during like the New Year's.
Yeah.
They have like their own like ball that drops, and I remember being super bored about that. And then the next morning, they like said how somebody got like shot like a block away from where we were. And then I remember, like, you know how like obviously as a parent you always care about your kids more than yourself. Like it was unseasonably cold down there, so like the children that were on it with me and some of my like male cousins, we all had coats, but like mom and dad and everybody had to like buy their own coats because they all thought it was going to be hot. I guess back then we didn't have weather apps that we could stock, but I don't remember eating beignets. Mom says we did. I don't. I've only had the Disney beignets. How do the Disney beignets compare?
The Disney beignets are
I've heard they're pretty good, but
they are not as good as the ones down there.
And they did have Kelsey and Joey ate beignets on that date, but they didn't do it at the cafe, and probably because if they did, the camera crew, the production, everybody.
Well,
you
noted they were both wearing white, and after you think about it, it's like because that powdered sugar will get everywhere.
All right, moving on.
Okay, the third date, Rachel is from Hawaii, yet they made her be in California for her home date. They just didn't want to fly her all the way out there.
That's what I think.
Well, because they flew her family in, but they didn't want to fly production out, and I think that is the difference.
Cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, they did have an episode earlier this season that KFC sponsored the whole thing, and they went hard in the promos. I think the show might be hard for money.
You wrote "I" here, but I believe what you meant was, we wish every family loved their child, sister, cousin, the way Rachel's family seems to stand her.
Yes.
Okay. The next date was with Maria the best. Her family is
I thought she was the hottest one too. And she's like the best one.
I just want to make sure I'm clear here and it's what we're talking about. So I'm sitting on the couch just watching the show.
Like, which one do you think's prettier?
And then all four of them are on screen and you go, which one's prettier? Because I know which one I think is. I agree. Maria is the prettiest. Her family is like the mafia. Production used mafia music every time her dad spoke. They really did lean hard into that. Maria couldn't fully open to Joey, and we think because he knew he wasn't taking her as the final rose, he couldn't bring her along to the fantasy suite. Team Maria for Bachelorette. If Daisy not Duck is Bachelorette, it will be acceptable if every single date is a Hallmark themed. Those are your typed out notes.
Yes. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. That covers the TV talk, but we've also been watching some movies, both at home and at the theater. And the first one we watched was finally Poor Things is on Hulu for streaming. For those that don't know, Poor Things is nominated for several categories at this year's Academy Awards. Obviously, at the time you guys are listening to this, we'll know if it won any awards or not. But we are coming to you, as Daniel likes to say, from the past. But Poor Things was one of the ones I really didn't know much about it other than that Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo was in it.
I'm not sure. I still do know anything about it.
I think I liked it better than you.
Yes.
But I was very excited to see this one. I was really annoyed that I was even going to just like buy it when we were trying to figure out what Oscar movies to watch first. And then I read that it had a deal with Hulu. It would be coming soon before the Oscars. Well, they certainly got it in record-breaking time, like a few days before the Oscars aired. So you want to kick things off and go first?
Are you trying to rely on me to give a synopsis here? Because sometimes you tend to do that.
I think that you do a good job with doing synopsis.
Okay. So Emma Stone's character, I'm going to go chronologically from what I understand how things went down. This is not how things go down in the movie. Chronologically speaking,
I might have to correct you, but go
Emma
on.
Stone's character is with child, and Emma Stone plays two characters in this movie. The first character that Emma Stone plays is with child and hates her husband. She jumps off a bridge.
We don't know that she hates her husband yet at this point in time.
I said I'm going chronologically.
But you don't.
From within the narrative of the movie, I'm not going chronologically as when things happen in the movie. I'm going chronologically as to the timeline I've mapped out. Okay.
And one could say that's very similar to when I say that 19 is almost 20 years ago. Proceed.
You're just going to stick with that joke, huh?
I am.
You're going
go
with,
at it hard.
You're going with the more you say it, the funnier it gets.
Yeah, it's funny to me, and that's all that matters. Thank you, therapy.
All right. Willem Dafoe finds the body of Emma Stone's character.
And he's like a scientist.
And he's a scientist guy. And as he describes it in the movie, and this was actually funny, he's like, he discovers the dead woman. The baby is still alive. And he said, so I did the only logical thing. And you're like, okay, what'd you do? And he's like, I removed the mother's brain and put her child's brain inside of the mother's body.
A brain transplant.
And then reanimated her so that now the infant's child was inside the mother's body. And then that's the movie.
Okay. So I'm going to catch everybody up to speed. Basically, think of like a Frankenstein type thing.
Yes.
But not quite. Like, he calls himself almost, I don't know if he calls himself a monster, but he has the monster vibes himself. He was clearly abused by his dad. Yeah. He has scars. He's a very wacky scientist. He takes on an apprentice who's kind of there witnessing everything.
There's like a dog walking around this house that has a goose head.
It's like a goose dog.
And then there's a cat with like a pig head, and it's like...
I thought it was a chicken with a pig head.
Chicken with a pig head, and the art style... Go ahead.
Do I have the floor now?
You have the floor.
I may proceed?
Yes.
I may proceed. All right. So we are basically seeing... I felt like it's a very... Honestly, and I saw this, it wasn't just... I did see this on TikTok. Somebody made this comparison. I thought the same thing as well, just in a different way. It's very similar to Barbie. the depiction of like womanhood just completely done 100% different. So we've got Emma Stone, and she's basically like a baby, a toddler at the beginning of the movie. She even walks funny because she's like learning to walk. She's the brain of an infant. So you have, from that point, you know, obviously she's still a very beautiful woman who, when men see her, they see just the woman. And it kind of goes back. I mean, I can say I was 11 or 12 years old the first time I was ever like catcalled by like a man that was probably like as old as my dad. Like, ew. And it's just how we over-sexualize women, and women can never have, I feel like women and girls, that we don't have the same like girlhood child experiences as little boys do, because so often Hollywood, other people, just people in general tend, and it even goes as, I'm going to get real deep here, to like dress code standards. I remember being in junior high and they were like, oh, you can't wear tank tops if it's not like 2 inches or something.
The shoulder, the most sensual of places on the body.
And it's like adult, like what is wrong with a spaghetti strap tank top? Really nothing. That was adults already doing that. Even if they're like, well, I wasn't like, no, do you agree with me? Like that is making it like something that an 11-year-old that's not even wearing like a regular, I think maybe like a training bra at that point. Like that is sexualizing kids.
I agree.
And sorry to get political and deep there. I don't know if you call that political, but like deep there. But that, I felt like the movie is sort of going for that. So she starts off, as she gets a little older, she still has that kid-like innocence. She wants to explore the world, see things. So she does eventually escape and leave with Mark Ruffalo's character, who plays this like lawyer guy that's really seedy. He's a piece of crap. He clearly just wanted to take advantage of her.
Yes. Because
he knew that she was a little like, he probably thought she was just like slower and didn't quite because he doesn't know that it's like the brain of a child. He wasn't he knew that there was some wacky stuff going on with the scientists, but he was using her for his own gains, right?
Yes.
So she goes off with him. She experiences passion. She sees things. But then as she is more opened up to the world, that's where she realizes that not everything is just so fun and interesting, that there's really crappy parts to the world, that there are people that are poor, that are dying, that are sick. She gets, let's just call it what it is, she gets the ick from him.
Oh, yeah.
She says at one point, she's like, at one point I was so mesmerized by you, and she's like, now I feel like contempt and rage. Now I feel like nothing. And I feel like we've all, as women and probably men too, growing up, had a partner or somebody that we liked at one point as a younger person, and we look back on that and we're like, ew, really? Really? I feel like I've had several moments where I have totally gotten the ick, and I can't believe that. So you see her just go on this like journey, and then I think it's just really like almost like a journey of like growing up, what it's like to be a woman. And then at the same time, like some people are like saying like we're all poor things in this world, and we're all like she kind of takes over the scientist's duties at the end, so to speak. So is she going to create things sort of like what she was? So there's a lot of different things that you could grasp from this movie. What is so funny over there? It's because I said duties.
No. Actually, no. Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. There's a lot you could take from this movie, and I think for me personally, it would have been a little bit more impactful if the exterior things like the cinematography and the art and architectural styles that they went through weren't so silly.
I think they did that I think that was purposeful and intentional.
I agree it was.
They tried to be creative, out of the box, different. Somebody pointed out that Mark Ruffalo like deadpan looks at the camera a few times. I did not notice that. But now that I've seen the clips of him doing that, the movie's even funnier to me. Like, he definitely did. I don't think I've ever seen him play. He usually plays like a good guy. I don't think I've ever seen him play like such a seedy, creepy character.
I mean, it certainly looked like the actors were having a great time making this movie.
It did.
But for me, I understood the story and I understood what they were going for, even though I don't have that.
And he becomes enamored by her because she tells him no. Yeah, and he's used to casting women aside. He didn't like it as a male that's always in control and has power to lose that power. I liked how they symbolized that as well.
Yeah, and even though I don't have that lived experience of being treated that way, I certainly understood the point they were going for. For me, it didn't land as hard just because I was so distracted by the other stuff they were doing with the story. Like that, I told you, that fisheye thing that they did every now and then. I was waiting for it to pay off, and it never did. And now I'm like, why did you do that?
Do you think maybe that we're to believe that maybe somebody was watching?
Well, that's
Mark
what
Ruffalo
I thought.
Does look at the camera. They just never actually said it. Like,
That's
what do you
I
think's
thought
the point
they
of
were
that?
going for, but they didn't pay it off in any meaningful way.
And y'all, at the beginning of this movie, before I started really vibing with it, Daniel was complaining about that, and I said, "You better complain about this like you do the Friday Night Lights shaky cam." That Friday Night Lights does do that for a purpose because they try to make it look like a reality type show in just real life. That is the intent behind.
Well, am I complaining about
it?
it?
You are. You're paying.
Am I complaining about it? Okay, thank you.
You have the floor again.
Yes, and I will also say, and I want to say that I don't know that I have ever said this about a film in my entire life. There was too much nudity in this film. Too much.
Men, women.
Yeah, too much.
Like, I think it
made me uncomfortable.
And I think they wanted
and I know,
you to,
I think that is the point of the movie, yes.
I think they wanted you to feel uncomfortable. And it's, to me, it was more like, okay, I see what you're doing. All right, let's go to the next scene. I felt like as the movie progressed, I really warmed up to it more. Do I think that it's like, I can definitely see what got nominated for Best Picture. It's not going to win. And if it does and I'm wrong, I'll call myself out next week, but I don't think anything's going to beat Oppenheimer. We'll see. And you guys will already know who won by the time I'm saying this. But anyway, moving on. I will keep going. It's the classic, let's do a creative, out of the box, different. I do think it's a little try hard in how they did that. But at the same time, I do see what they were going for. And like I said, I do think it does compare to Barbie in that way, kind of a journey of womanhood. So I appreciated it from that. I think I would love it if it does win some awards for costuming. I think the costuming was really good.
I think Emma Stone deserves lead actress.
You think so? Do you think she'll win?
I don't know. I don't think I've seen any of the other performances that are nominated for lead. Like, we've seen some of the supporting.
We've not seen Killers of the Flower Moon yet.
I think that's the main competition.
Yes.
But I do think of the one, like, I know why she's nominated. She did a phenomenal job. And I certainly, again, I'll go back to what I said about the nudity in the movie. She put herself out there.
Literally.
Like, and that's not an easy thing to do.
Really not.
It really is not. And she kept it in character the entire time. I thought she was phenomenal in the movie, and so if she wins, I will have no issue with that.
I did like the start of black and white, and then as she learned more about the world, more colors came to.
Is that what you took from that? Because like I still was at the end of the movie, not really clear why they started with black and white and then transitioned. She even was wearing
brighter colors and stuff at the end. It's a growing, change, and evolving. That's what I took from it. Maybe I'm completely off base, but that's how I interpreted that, because I felt the costuming, the colors, I felt like that was very intentional. I did like, there was one scene where she was still obviously in the base, probably like a preteen at this point, where she's at the table with Mark Ruffalo and there's a crying baby and she's like, "Excuse me, I've got to get up and go punch this baby." I think that was funny. So would you recommend that people watch Poor Things? It's trippy. It's a trippy movie.
I don't know that I can. Like, just the general audience, I don't know that. I think the average moviegoer is going to punk out of this movie in 20 to 30 minutes.
There's a lot of people that really, really like it.
Oh, I see that. I can see that why.
I can see a lot of people being like, what is going on?
I can name you the demographics, too, that I think really, really are into this movie. So,
bitch. Okay. I need to go take some blue Powerade or blue Gatorade and come back to do my next part to talk about
Dune Part 2.
Dune Part 2.
The sequel to the original Dune Part 1 that we got in 2021.
Early 2021, right?
Yeah, based off of the classic, foundational, honestly, science fiction novel by the same name, Dune, written in 1965. And this was the second... Part 1, Part 2, they broke the book up into two parts because
could you a good choice.
Can you imagine if they had tried to do this in one movie like they did in the 80s?
No, I cannot. I think it would be a mess.
Yeah, it would be a mess. So part one, I don't know how much we've really talked about it on the podcast. Part one, your thoughts were very much like, I liked it, but it ended as soon as it started getting really interesting.
So part one came out, I do believe it was in some theaters, but they released it straight, from my understanding, to Max, because movies still weren't fully opening up at that point. It was still very, it was early 2021, so it was very still pandemic-y. We watched it. I remember being like, oh, the movies, we're finally getting to the plot. We're finally getting somewhere. And then the credits rolled. And the first one was long, too. It was a longer movie. And then a few years would pass by, and apparently I remembered absolutely nothing from the first Dune. So I had to do some catch-up to a previously on Dune.
To defend you on that,
I'm not alone in this.
It is an incredibly dense movie, and it's working off an incredibly dense book. And it's kind of surprising how much of the stuff were actually able to get in there.
Well, when we were going over the recap, I was like, wait a minute, Jason Momoa was in the first one, and he had a pretty big role in the first one.
Yeah, he was Duncan Idaho. That's a big role.
And even you didn't remember everything from it. The first one, the events. When we were watching that recap together, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's how they did that. Oh, yeah, that's what's going on. I think that, okay, so from my understanding, part two, we got to go to the theater.
Yes.
Got to have some movie theater popcorn.
We did not buy the popcorn bucket.
Love it.
I don't think they had it at our theater, but we wouldn't have gotten it anyways.
I think I would have wanted that one. Weirdness. They should be marketing a blue drink instead of a
really. They really
bucket.
should have been hard. Hey, you want the
Dune
blue
juice.
The blue icy to go with this?
What is it called? The water of truth or something?
Water of life, I think, is what they called it.
Oh, whatever. I would call it Dune juice.
Sandworm juice, yeah. I mean, they're milking it out of the sandworms.
That's what they should do. So I think that the movie does a good job of starting off. Because my understanding, and this is what I was worried about, I guess after the scene in the first movie and the regular Dune from the 80s and the book, there's supposed to be a bigger time jump than there is. They didn't have such a large time jump, and they start off with Florence's character writing in her diary and speaking out loud. So it's not a previously on Dune, but it does catch you up a little bit, because you had me worried that we're going to straight up have a 3-year time jump or something, because that's what they've done before, and they don't do that. I want to illustrate that.
I
they
think
don't
in
do
the
that
book,
in
and I want to preface this by saying, as many times as I have tried, I've not gotten through the book. But in the book, I believe between the ending of part one movie and the beginning of there's a 2-year time gap at least, and they shortened that time gap and actually showed us bits of the beginning of the movie. I think the first 40 minutes of the movie is essentially covering that time gap.
I think that was the smart choice to do for a movie. And a lot of times when movies split into parts, how the big trend to do the last movie of Mockingjay Part 2 of the Hunger Games, Deathly Hallows Part 2, I'm not down for that as much. I see it as a money grab. I think we could have almost had 3 parts for the first book. I think it's a good decision that they did. Do I wish they would have done a little more in the first one? Because maybe, but I don't know. I think obviously it's fresh in my head. I already prefer part 2 over part 1. What about you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's... Part 1 was kind of just...
It was the setup.
Really honestly setting you not just up for this story, but the world that you're inhabiting in general. Giving you ideas into what are the Bene Gesserit and what are the great houses.
And you can still think of it as one big movie. Oftentimes, to compare to a totally different genre, but Marvel, Infinity War, Endgame... Those movies, the events of them just kind of intertwined to me, because they basically were a part 1, part 2 movie deal. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, well, that happened in Endgame. And I'm like, wait a minute. No, it happened in Infinity War. So it's kind of the same style. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. So, knowing what I know about these books, again, like I said, not having read the first one, but from being a science fiction fan, I know of Dune. I know the story.
This is the blueprint, right?
This is one of the two.
The
there's
sci-fi book.
Yeah, there's this and
tier.
Foundation are they are to science fiction what the Lord of the Rings is to fantasy.
Yes.
The foundational works of fiction that kind of set the rules. Like I think you've seen a lot of the TikToks online of people comparing Dune and Star Wars.
Yes.
And there's a lot of comparisons that can be made there.
I have a bone to pick about that.
But I thought it was really well executed, and I honestly, it's so shocking to me in 2024 to having been a science fiction fan all of my life to see where science fiction is today. Like that it is like when I get on TikTok,
it's hard to not be gatekeepy.
It is. It's really difficult
because you got made fun of. Probably.
Yeah, I got made fun of for liking this stuff when I was a kid. But now, like every other TikTok,
be gatekeepy, though.
Every other TikTok is a Dune TikTok. You know, it's everywhere.
Can I get into that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a bone to pick about that. He just mentioned the Star Wars comparison thing. So I'm talking. It is like Dune came out. We saw it the second weekend of its release.
Yes.
This is like I haven't even logged into work yet. It is a early Friday morning. I open up TikTok to kind of wake myself up, get myself ready to brush my teeth, go about my day. I see a spoiler right away comparing Paul. Is it Timothy Chalamet?
Yeah.
I just call him Timothy. We'll just call him Timothy. I see a spoiler right away comparing his character to my beloved Anakin Skywalker, and I'm like, excuse me, with the I think I've seen this film before and I didn't like the ending. So I come raging mad like a bull into the kitchen because I think Daniel's in there like, you're making coffee, we're going about our routine, and I said, excuse me, I said, is Paul going to turn bad and be into Anakin? And you're like, what? No, that doesn't happen. Daniel totally lied to me. But
I was mad.
I wouldn't call your thing a total lie because I think I'll get into this in a minute. I don't think the Anakin comparisons are quite fair in this situation, but you did try to play it off, and I'm like, I don't want to see it now.
Meanwhile, I was
and we didn't see it that weekend either.
Mad because I wanted you to come into this what I know of the story. I wanted you to come into that fresh.
But the internet has no chill.
The internet had no chill. You didn't get the opportunity to come into it fresh.
And y'all listen to us. You know we're a spoiler podcast. For the millionth time, we have chapter markers. If you haven't seen Dune yet and you care about Dune, I hope you paid attention to the chapter markers and skipped ahead. So you expect that.
Yeah.
It's not really cool. Like this juncture, a week past release date, might be a little bit on me if I haven't seen it. It wasn't even like 7:30 in the morning yet, and I had that Dune spoiler on TikTok.
It was early.
You played it off decently, though. But then you were like, no, that's not true. Somebody made that up. So then later throughout the week, I'm getting more and more TikToks in my feed because obviously I'm an Anakin girl, so I'm always getting Anakin stuff because the internet, our phones do spy on us. Yes, they do. And I'm getting like 4 more, and I'm like, are you sure? So then you're like, all right. Just had to get that off my chest.
He's an anti-hero. He's not a villain.
And I like Paul way better in this one than I did part 1. So
there you go.
You may proceed.
Yeah, it was great. I thought it was really good. I'm not certain. I've seen a lot of people being like, oh man, this is an Oscar movie. It might get nominated for Best Picture, but I personally don't see it as that transformative. Yeah. I think it is, again, very well done. I think that they
visually
melded
stunning.
Visually stunning.
Looks like
there was a couple of shots that we both were like, "This is a great shot." They melted practical effects with CGI in a really good way. That I don't know. CGI keeps getting better, but in some ways it's getting worse because we're relying on it too much. Whereas those desert shots, like that was a real desert.
Like when you talk about CGI, I'll use an example for another one of Daniel's beloved movies, the OG Jurassic Park. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Then I watched the new crappy ones where it's more CGI and the dinosaurs just look fake to me. They don't look. It doesn't look like that first Jurassic Park that just blew us away because it doesn't feel as pure.
Yeah. So I really loved it. I will say I think one of maybe my bigger complaints about the movie, and I think we both agree on this, the Emperor of the Emperor.
Yes, not Palpatine.
Played by Christopher Walken.
Great actor.
Miscast.
Absolute miscast.
Every time he was on screen, it took me out of the movie because all I saw and heard was Christopher Walken.
I like Christopher Walken. I enjoy the work that he's done. Again, I don't know. I have not read the book Dune. I didn't watch the 80s one. I'm not sure if, because when I think of, the Emperor, I think of, very powerful people. If he is supposed to be, kind of a weak, meek old man, then okay. But I don't even think Christopher Walken played that well. No. I just felt like he delivered his lines as if he were Christopher Walken and that he just showed up to do a paycheck. And I feel horrible saying that because I do really like Christopher Walken, but that would be the weak spot in the movie for me.
He was in such stark contrast to the amazing performances that everyone around him was giving. Everybody around him was going for it.
Of that, amazing performances. I think on the flip side, the person that stood out to me the most, well, like you said, they all did great, minus Christopher Walken, was Austin Butler.
Oh, for sure.
He is my standout of that movie. I think if you watched Austin Butler and Elvis and you gave it a chance, you needed to admit that, this is not the same kid. I mean, it is the same kid, but he's grown. Like, people, a lot of times when you do Disney, which that's how he started off with, those people get put in those boxes for life, thought of as like child stars, just a Disney person. I think he really proved his acting chops then, but a lot of people were still skeptical. They made fun of him about the voice. I'm going to say it. He does good at voices, because there are points where I'm looking at you and I'm like, is that Austin Butler's real voice, or is that the guy from Mamma Mia's voice who's also in Dune? What's his name? Like Skellen?
Yeah, something like that. But he was trying to mimic him.
Sounded exactly like him.
Because he was a relation of that character.
He's his nephew.
He was trying to mimic it. And he was like, when he was on screen, he stole every scene he was in.
Every scene.
He was excellent. Excellent.
So I really think if people were like skeptical of him after Elvis, like, is he the real deal? Is he the good actor that everybody's saying? Yes.
Oh, I think so.
Because this is a completely different character than Elvis Presley on every conceivable possible level, and he was the standout of this movie.
Yes. So overall, what'd you think? Like, a lot of people were throwing a lot of stuff around before we saw it, saying like greatest sequel ever.
I'm not going to say it's the greatest sequel ever. That's a little bit off topic. I will say that sci-fi, I'm more of a fantasy. I consider Star Trek more sci-fi, and I consider Star Wars, while it is sci-fi, I feel like Star Wars is more of fantasy. I really do. I think it really kind of blends both of those lines more so. So
the themes that usually are running through Star Wars tend to be more fantasy aligned. But at the end of the day, it is a science fiction simply because it's in space.
Of course.
And it has to be
classified
as such.
But it has a lot of a fantasy element.
Yes, I agree.
To get super nerdy. So sci-fi has never been my favorite. I think I almost have like the same experience as I did the first movie. It started off a little bit slower for me, but then that was purposeful because it was catching us up. It almost felt like I watched two different movies in one, and I liked that they did that. I liked that they filmed it this way. So we have Paul, all his stuff that he's got going on with Zendaya's character, all that stuff. And the whole time I'm looking at you and I'm like, so at one point I leaned into Daniel and I said, okay, did they put Austin Butler on this press tour just because he's Austin Butler and they want to capitalize off that fame? Because I knew they had Florence on there and she has limited scenes in this movie, but she's like probably one of the biggest actresses in Hollywood right now. And you're like, no, he has a really big role. And I'm like, okay, but we're like 15 minutes in, bruh. I was like, when am I going to see Austin Butler? So the way they separated it is once we get to his part, is it
Fade Rafa.
Fade
Rafa, yes.
Okay. So we get to that whole like plot point, and it almost felt like at that point a separate movie.
Yeah, and you stuck with, like, you were with Paul at the beginning of the movie for a good 40, 50 minutes, and then you were with Fade Rafa for a good 40 to 50 minutes.
And then it all comes together at the end in amazing fashion.
And the last, 40 to 50 minutes of this movie
go by really fast.
Is like, whoa.
Yeah, it goes by fast. Everything comes together. I liked that style that they did. I would have been probably a little bit irritated if they had done, which a lot of movies do, because I think sometimes movies are like, oh, they're going to have bad attention spans. We got to jump back and forth between the two. I think it would have made it more confusing to do that. And I think it was a great choice.
I think it was
to split it like that.
I think it was respectful of the audience and saying, I believe you guys are here to watch this story, and I think I can hold your attention for more than 5 minutes, but because, like you said, a lot of movies would have been flipping back between those two different kind of conflicting storylines.
And it'd been like almost whiplash.
And almost whiplash. And so instead they said, we're just going to sit with this for a while, and we're going to let Timothy do his thing and show you the emotions that he's going through, and then we're going to introduce you to this new character. And we can't just introduce you to this new character in 5 minutes and then switch back to Timothy again. We need to give you some time to to understand who this guy is. And they did that, and I thought it was a brave choice by the director.
But it was brilliant.
And it was. And this time, at this day and age, you do not see movies do that. Like, when you've got storylines going on like that, they feel this need to, like, switch you between them to keep the pacing.
Almost to the point, it's like, okay, what? And I think this was a great move. From an Oscar perspective, like what people are saying, I could see it getting, like, the Oscars are always trying to get people to watch, and I could see it getting the courtesy nom. I can't see it winning.
I mean, we don't know what else is coming this year.
I don't know what else
is
coming. So who knows? It was, again, like we talked about, you said that we were both talking about some of the shots that were just gorgeous. Like, there is this scene of Timothy's character, Paul, where he's just kind of standing, and it's got, like, the fire and, like, shadowing, like, in the background, or kind of in front of him. And he's, like,
you're
there.
looking behind him,
And it was just a really cool shot. And it wasn't a try-hard shot either. I was like, poor things, they tried hard in some areas. That was just beautifully done. And I thought the first one, the main memory I had from the first one was that it reminded me of, like, a screensaver from, like, Windows 95 of those beautiful deserty scenes. So when I say that, I'm not being mean. When I say it's like a screensaver, I'm saying that as a compliment.
It's a compliment, because that's something you're going to look at all the time, and you want to be able to really enjoy it.
People might be like, why are you being so sarcastic about that? But no, I'm really not.
I certainly give this movie high marks for, again, the way they blended practicality with CGI. I wish more movies would do this. I could not believe this movie was cheaper to make than, like, every Marvel movie over the past 5 years, and the She-Hulk show and all that stuff.
And we liked She-Hulk. We're not crapping on She-Hulk, but when Daniel told me that, I was like, She-Hulk was like the Full House of Marvel shows. It was like the funny comedy that cost more to make than Dune.
Yeah, and remember, that cost includes the cost to pay the actors.
Crazy, just crazy.
It's just crazy, and they have done a phenomenal job. I've liked Denis Villeneuve when I watched him do, like, the Blade Runner updated movie, the Blade Runner sequel, which I thought was
definitely a really good choice to do this movie in two parts.
Yes.
You tell me that the one from the 80s was like a mess. Well, I can see why.
Yeah.
To cram all of this plot, all of this storyline into one singular movie would have just not been great. Like, because a lot of people I know, I get, even though, again, I'm not sure I'm going to read the Dune books like I'm planning to read Percy Jackson.
But I feel like there's a part of your mind that's thinking about it, though, and I'm surprised by that, because as you've talked about it, the more it's like you haven't ruled that possibility out.
Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. I will let you know. But I have read opinions from book fans. And a lot of the book fans were like, this is a really hard movie to put to screen, and they're doing the best they possibly can.
Yes.
I think I could tell, like, okay, so let's talk about, like, the actual plot points. Paul's mother. Mm-hmm. I just know her as the woman that's in
Lady Jessica.
Lady Jessica. I didn't much care for her in the first one, and now I feel validated in not caring because she's kind of evil. The way Daniel explained it to me, and I'm like, that's a great description. So we compared it to another great show, well, before the end, which we've complained about several times, Game of Thrones. So, like, her people, what are they called? I call them the witch women.
The Bene Gesserit.
The Bene Gesserit. They're like the little finger.
Yeah.
And the whole thing, playing all the sides. But I didn't much care for her in the first one. And then we find out kind of really more about her in this one. And I'm like, justified. She didn't pass the vibe check in the first one. Certainly didn't in this one. And now I'm going to get back to those TikToks about comparing Paul to Anakin. I don't think that's a very fair comparison. I really don't. Like, I don't even I see the anti-hero comparison, yes. But if I had to complain about how they did that, it was very, like, 0 to 60. Like, suddenly he drinks the blue Dune juice, and he's like, all right, now I don't want to just be a part of you. I'm going to lead. Like, let's be crazy. And it was very, like, woo! And I don't know, is it because that juice does, like, affect their brain and, like, shows you, like, the truth and makes you act differently?
I think part of it's that. I also think part of it is he did find out that history of his family and found out that basically and I don't want to spoil that part for people because I think that's a really important part. But he found out about the lies, not only of his mother, but about the Harkonnen.
So he was irritated with that.
And I think all of that drove him there. I will say, to your point about the Darth Vader comparison, I think that a lot of the people that are making that comparison are people who have read the books. They've got some insight into some things that are going to happen in the future of Paul's character that have not been on screen yet, and they are going to be adapting the second book, Dune Messiah, and I think that's where a lot of that stuff is coming from.
Yeah, I figured that some of that explanation is probably more fleshed out in the books anyway.
Yes, for sure.
But I still don't think Paul thinks that. I mean, I guess because Anakin kind of says what have I done, and then once
sure.
Padme dies, he's just personality switch Vader. Whereas Paul, I think Paul really believes what he's doing. He's I'm going to bring you guys to paradise. So I think Paul does think everything he's doing is correct, whereas Anakin knows what he's doing is wrong at points, and I love that man.
Yeah, it's funny because Paul, before drinking the life of water, really was not a believer. He very much was cynical. He knew what his mother had been up to and the Bene Gesserit, and he was like, you guys set all this crap up. Then he drinks, and you have to wonder, what effect did that stuff have on him that maybe
I thought
changed.
He didn't find out about the mother stuff until he drank the water.
He found out about her history from a genealogical standpoint, who her father was.
I thought he found that out when he drank the water.
He did, but
he said he found it out before.
He knew about how they had been setting it up for him to be the leader and how they'd been pulling the strings all along. He knew all of that stuff before they even got to Dune, and so I think that he was cynical on that side. So he was kind of like a reverse of Anakin in that way, where he was cynical. Anakin was always very hopeful. And always trying to find the way, and Paul was cynical about it. And then when he drank the blue worm juice, suddenly he's like, is he falling for the Bene Gesserit's lies, or does he really believe? Is he really believe this about himself? Well, and I think that's the question that's kind of left open.
His mom said that even she didn't know the full truth about everything until she drank the juice.
She said she did not know who her father was until she drank the juice in this movie.
Can I just circle back to The Bachelor real quick? I have a relevant
comment. My God.
So, because water is so scarce where they are, anytime somebody cries, they take it and they put it in the water thing. Yeah. Well, Joey on The Bachelor, anytime the women cry, he's always wiping their tears. I'm like, can we do a Dune crossover where Joey takes it
and drinks it?
I think that's a good place to kind of end our conversation.
I think
on Dune.
So as well. Yes. So anyways, Dune 2, excellent. If you watched the first one and you liked it even mildly, this one is way better.
Way better.
And continues all those storylines. And really, I think they're part one, part two. This is one story.
And we haven't had the third Dune greenlit yet, but I have a feeling with the success of this one.
It's just getting so much buzz. I just can't imagine that they don't go forward with it. But I will say, for anybody paying attention and wanting to know when that's going to happen, the Dune book that we have now wrapped up telling that story, and the second book, which is the one they're going to tell in the third movie, there's a 12-year time gap between those two.
Do you think they'll do that, or do you think they'll shrink it?
I think they may do the gap, and I think because the director of this movie, who did both of them, he writes and directs. I think he has indicated he'd kind of like to take a break.
Will Zendaya's character still be in it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say this from a chemistry perspective, that I feel like they're both good actors, but romantically, I wasn't feeling it between Timothy and Zendaya.
Yeah, I can see that.
And obviously Timothy and Florence have acted together as Amy and Laurie, and they have insane chemistry. And I don't think I'm intended to feel, because that's an arranged marriage, for them to have amazing chemistry. But I felt more chemistry from the brief scenes that they have, and
they had one scene together. Yeah,
and it's probably my previous experience of those two working together. But I was like, is this intentional, or is it just that Timothy and Florence should do so many movies together because they have amazing chemistry? I mean, let's call it what it is. Those two, and I'll throw Austin Butler in there, even though, spoiler alert, we're not probably going to see his character again. Timothy and Florence, I think, and then Austin to a point, are they are the up and coming actors, especially Timothy and Florence. They've been everywhere the past couple years.
I think Austin Butler, I'm sorry, between Elvis,
you gotta respect him.
No, listen, between Elvis and this, people should be looking. I am looking forward to whatever he does next.
Exactly,
because I think he is great in this movie. I've seen interviews with him where he said he loved doing this movie, and particularly like the sword fights that they were having. He just really loved doing that stuff. So, I mean, get this guy in a Star Wars. Get this guy in something. Like, I'm telling you, I'm excited for whatever he does next.
Me too.
Speaking of excited for things, I know many of you are probably upset. We haven't talked about the OC in a few weeks now, and guess what? We're an hour and 25 minutes into this one, so it ain't happening here either. But next week, we have a pre-recorded episode because we got to be out of town, and so that's going to be pretty much catching you up on everything OC-related that we've been watching. We have been watching, and we're getting there.
And we know that a lot of you guys, I've had people specifically tell me that they listen specifically for those OC recaps. So we do apologize. But we, like Daniel said, we promise it's coming. And then for those of you that were hoping that we would have talked about the Oscars, we do plan to watch that. And we will let it ruminate for a week. Let those, our thoughts on who wins, who loses, performances. Hopefully no one gets slapped this year. Hopefully everyone's cool, well-behaved. We'll give you all our thoughts on that. And we promise you, that OC recap is coming. On that note, you want to sign off? Do you want to try to do the Dune song?
I can't do it. Man, that
Yours
was
sounds
terrible.
more like a monkey.
Jeez, that was awful. I
Bye,
apologize, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of We Watch TV, a podcast about the TV shows we watch. You can find more from Hope and Daniel on Instagram at We Watch TV Podcast. Drop us a line if you like the show, have a question, or a recommendation. You can find Hope on Twitter at Lil Runner and Daniel on Twitter at The Real Hobo Dan. Music for today's podcast was provided by Your Tunes from Pixabay. Artwork was created using the AI program Midjourney with prompts written by Daniel.